Dear Verena, good morning.
Good morning, Stefano.
Thank you very much for joining this new web series, which I titled War as Reset. Many wish the pandemic was nothing more than a bad dream, a nightmare. And you and I, 2 years ago, had a conversation about COVID and about what was happening at the early stages of the pandemic. That had more than 10,000 views, so it was really helpful to people that watched it. The truth is that the pandemic is still a reality for most of the world's population as we speak. Look at China, for example. Many wish that the Russo-Ukrainian war was nothing more than a dream, a nightmare. According to psychoanalysis, nightmares can only disappear when their meaning is represented. My wish with this conversation with you, Verena, with the 10, 11 people I talked to already, is to try to go a little bit deeper. Because I feel there is a lot of superficiality looking at war and at this war, as there was superficiality looking at COVID. Also because Andrew Samuels suggested that within both the microcosm of an individual and the macrocosm of the global village, we are floated by psychological themes, and that politics embody the psyche of a people. Also, Andrew Samuels actively demonstrated how useful and effective perspective derived from psychotherapy might be in the formation of policy, in new ways of thinking about the political process and in the solution of conflict. Therefore, I wish this series can be an opportunity for depth, to contrast or even compensate the current media voyeurism, where we eat war on a daily basis, where war is an attraction. Verena, what is war?
Well, I think it's a barbaric regression to archaic times, killing each other without any meaning. And it is a killing that is ordered. So it is an idea of grandiosity in destruction.
Mm-hmm. Idea of grandiosity and destruction. James Hillman's, which you knew, you met, wrote in his book called A Terrible Love for War. There is no practical solution to war because war is not a problem solvable by the practical mind, which is better equipped for its conduct than for its avoidance or conclusion. War belongs to our soul as an archetypal truth of the cosmos. It is a human work and an inhuman horror, and a love that no other love has been able to overcome. Very interesting. Love that no other love has been able to overcome. We can open our eyes to this terrible truth and, becoming aware of it, devote all our passionate intensity to undermining the enactment of war, strengthened by the courage that culture possesses, even in the dark ages, to continue to sing as it resists war. We can understand it better, postpone it longer, work to gradually remove it from the support of a hypocritical religion, but war as such will remain until the gods themselves leave. What comes to your mind?
It comes to my mind that I find we can say that conflict you can't avoid, but not that war you can't avoid. And especially there are different kinds of wars. And I always thinking about that there are no fight scenes in the cave paintings. There are cave paintings and there are no fight scenes. So I'm not so sure that we just have to say it's an archetype. We have just to suffer it. I think it is a human possibility, but for me, this kind of looking at archetypes is a little bit difficult because then it says nothing will change in the world, and that would also mean women have to go back to the hearth, men have to go to the battle. And I like the second part of it, that with human culture, we try to humanize it. Well, perhaps he is right and I am naive, but it is for me, I wouldn't like to accept it, that it is just there and it is coming from God. No.
Love that no other love has been able to overcome. Could this mean, if we were Freudian, that war is in our nature, in the instinct, in the Trieb?
Yeah, this is, I think this is how I understand him, but we have not only, we don't have the war in our instinct, we have the aggressivity in our instinct, we have the fighting in our instinct, but we have also the caring in our instinct, we have the, we are looking for someone, we have a seeking system in our instincts, and out of this being threatening, that must not be a fight, must not be a war. A fight can be, fighting can be on different levels, and I think this is what is in our in our human beings.
This is very important, Verena. The difference between aggressivity and then the next step to war, as if there is no consciousness, if there is not a critical attitude that will at some point stop it.
Yeah.
Another point from Hillman is war as such will remain until the gods themselves leave. Now we have a philosophical problem. With Nietzsche first, who said that God is dead, then with Freud, who said that religion is an illusion, but then with Jung, who brought actually spirituality back into the conversation. Let me read you the beginning of Wotan, which for us Jungian is very important, but also problematic. Paragraph 371, Jung says, when we look back to the time before 1914, we find ourselves living in a world of events which would have been inconceivable before the war. We were even beginning to regard war between civilized nations as a fable. Interesting. The same happened to us after Second World War, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he continues, thinking that such an absurdity would become less and less possible in our rational, internationally organized world. And what came after the war was a veritable witch's Sabbath. Isn't this what happened in the past 70, 80 years?
Yeah. But this is frightening. This is really frightening, because then we have the idea nothing will change.
Yeah. And he continues, paragraph 372. But in the sphere of religion, we can see that once that some very significant things have been happening, we need feel no surprise that in Russia, the colorful splendor of the Eastern Orthodox Church have been superseded by the movements of the godless. I guess he's talking about the revolution, Lenin, and communism.
Yeah.
And however deplorable the low spiritual level of the scientific reaction, it was inevitable that 19th century scientific enlightenment should one day dawn in Russia. What is he saying here? Is he saying that the Russian Revolution of the 1916 is because of the decrease or the end of spirituality and scientific? What is he saying?
Yeah, doesn't he say that the problem of the Soviet Union is the loss of the spirituality? And this is why there is the revolution, and where this is this mass movement. This is one aspect. Actually, I think it's very difficult just to say from one or two sentences what is the meaning of the revolution, because I think if life is really very, very bad for a lot of people, they have to make a revolution. I think revolution means it is a kind of transformation that has not occurred in the right time, because we have transformations, the transformations that are easygoing. Perhaps we even do not see that it is transformed. And then we have transformations. These are really a kind of click. A lot of people, a critical mass says, now we have to do something. I hope that with our ecological crisis, such a thing will happen. And so I think revolution is revolution has a lot of aspects. This idea that war has something to do with spirituality, I think, okay, he's talking about Wotan, and with Wotan and his idea is that you are kept by archetypal energy, to change something by the energy of this god Wotan. For me, this is it's so male, you know. We have not only Wotan, we have also people are caring. People are, huh?
Of course, we have Wotan, but if we go back to Ilman and the gods of war, we have Ares and Athena. And Athena is not just a goddess of war, is also a goddess of many other things. But
yeah, she's a goddess of creativity.
Yeah.
And I think this would be the remedy against war, to be more creative.
And this is exactly the same you said 2 years ago about COVID. And this is why I like to talk to you about war as well as COVID, because when there is no creativity. But what I find interesting from these two paragraphs is that somehow he's saying in Russia, the Orthodox Church lost spirituality, the ability maybe to talk to people, and the revolution started. But now Putin and Kirill are actually saying the same. This is a religious war. Putin justified the invasion of Ukraine as an action in defense of his, compatriots, Russian compatriots in Ukraine, and he cited the gospel. There is no bigger love than to give your life for your friends. But the words of Putin were actually anticipated by Kirill, the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, who in the first day of war even started to say that this war it doesn't have a physical nature, it is metaphysical. So according to Putin, this war is legal, is possible, because it's against the secularized West, as demonstrated by the gay prides and blah, 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 blah. The swapping, 100 years of swapping. Russia lost spirituality. Russia, from top down, is receiving spirituality, which for me is geopolitical power and seeking, looking especially.
Yeah. I think this is...
Isn't it a bit paranoid?
Yeah. I think it's the part of Kirill I can hear here. And I think there is such a lot of fantasies that are produced by the Russian in this war. Fantasies of being threatened, fantasies of bringing the real nation back to the Ukraine, bringing the spiritual back to the Ukraine. For me, this is a whole... it's a whole kind of fantasies that are connected, and well, I think for me it is much more basic. It is a revenge for the dissolution of the Soviet Union, of the former Soviet Union. It is a problem. They are trying to bring back to have Russian great again. And then sure, I think the utmost problem is really that they want to destabilize Western democracy and our Western freedom, our democracy, our Western freedom, also our values. This is also why we are so threatened. But to say that this is in the name for God, in the name of God, this is for me blasphemy.
Yes, this is exactly what Pastor Bittoni, that is very close to me, said. War is blasphemy, and to use gods for this reason is even more blasphemy. I have 2 points now, but I would go with the second one. You said values. On the 7th of March, so 1 week after the beginning of the war, an Italian journalist, Maurizio Ferrara, wrote on Corriere della Sera, "The war in Iraq gave an important shock to Europe. In the wake of the massive streets demonstration, 2 great European intellectuals, Jürgen Habermas and Jacques Derrida, asked themselves the question, what binds Europeans together with respect to the international order? They answer, a political mentality different from the American one and based on some common traits, an aversion to the use of force, first of all, and therefore an insistence on law and respect for international legality, support for a global system based on liberal multilateral institutions and on human rights, fruit of a past inspired by opposite principles and characterized by centuries of bloody carnage. Precisely, this mentality had pushed Europe to build a foreign and security policy and the EU overcoming the stupid and simplistic opposition between war and peace. This is exactly what Putin is trying to fight. Yep. And this is exactly what Ukraine wants to join. But we didn't listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we could say it has really to do with democracy. And democracy is fighted not only by Putin, democracy is in danger all over the world. Democracy and also this creative freedom, we have. And this is what Putin wants to fight. But I think what I have seen by now, the West is coming together is much more than they ever had been together. So I think we are fighting for those values.
Absolutely. And for me, it's interesting to see that, I like to write poetry. Maybe it's not poetry, verses. I found is it here? Oh yeah. This is my first collection of poetry that I wrote in 2005.
Nice.
There are so many poems.
Look, this is a very nice cover.
For our next project.
Yeah.
Okay. I found so many poems about the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, about Yanushchenko, about Yanukovych. It's interesting that this is also interesting for me from so many years. Who knows why? But why we Europeans, let's forget the Americans for a moment, but why we Europeans didn't listen to the Ukrainians? 2006, 2008, 2014 with the Maidan, they were really fighting for their democracy.
Absolutely, yeah.
We don't want to belong to a system that is authoritarian. We want to be able to be a country that self-determines itself, that if there are crises, problem, tension, it goes on. Like the United States, that is going through a big crisis last year with the Capitol Hill big problem in January. It was democratic and it continued to be democratic. Okay, let's not look at the almost perfect example of Switzerland or Norway, but we want to be a country that is self-determining its present and future. But we Europeans didn't look at them as if these values suggested by Habermas and Derrida are not for them because they are not fully European.
Yeah, sure. We can say this was it was a mistake. It was a crucial mistake that we didn't take serious what Putin said, because he announced the whole thing. And I think the West wanted to believe in peace. We can take the word naive. It is not enough. We have not been skeptical enough. I would say the way the West organized it after World War II to cooperate, I think this is correct. It is much better to cooperate than to fight. But even if you cooperate, you have to be a little bit skeptical. You have not to be totally mistrusting, But we had trusted too much. And we had also been, I think, we was also a little bit blended by the idea of peace. Because the idea of peace gives us a lot of money. We don't have to give a lot of money for arms, for defense. It gives us a lot of space for creativity. And this is, I think, why we are a little bit blended by the idea of peace and not understanding that we have always two parts. We have the aggressive, destructive part, and we have the creative part. And we have been believing, or the West has been believing in the cooperative, creative part, but not in the fighting part. And then the problem is with our relationship to the Ukraine. Ukraine has a long history, I learned. And the Ukraine was a very, very important country, but we don't know it. It is just, for us, it's just the East. And actually, I think, okay, for me, Ukrainian people are Western people, but I don't think that everyone sees it in this way.
Yeah, Western people with a minus, with some Slavic blood that makes them different. Well, you see, in Italy, I'm Italian, and in Italy, I didn't know until a month ago that Italy is the biggest, there's the highest number of Ukrainians outside of Ukraine, so the biggest diaspora. Why? Of women especially that come as workers to work in the houses, to take care of the elderly houses, and they go back then to country. Something that happened now. You know, they had to flee for another reason. Do we give peace for granted, Verena, in the West?
Please repeat that.
Do we give peace for granted?
Aha.
And that's why we are so shocked, and not as creativity, but we are sending so many armaments.
I'm not sure if we keep it for granted, but I think we think that we had a lot of peace work in the last centuries, and I think we believe that there can be peace in the world. We don't have to forget, especially when we are talking about the role of Germany, we shouldn't forget that they had two awful wars. And it is the compensation that they did such a lot they invested a lot in peace work. And I think if we are going to the individual, we know we have conflicts, but we all try to overcome the conflicts. I think this is deeply human, that we try to overcome the conflicts, and sometimes it does not work. So I don't think that it is a mistake. But when you say a guarantee, no, we never have a guarantee. We also have no guarantee, because in the end we will die. You have no guarantee in life.
Conflict. It is clear that there was a conflict, there was a problematic situation at the Ukrainian-Russian border.
Yeah, but this is the problem. If they would have a conflict, for example, they would say, look, Donetsk belongs to us. No, Donetsk belongs to us. Then we had a conflict. But I think Putin created a conflict. Or even he didn't create a conflict, he just played out his power. Because if there would be a conflict, it would be much easier to de-escalate the problem. Then people could talk about the conflict. And for conflicts, we have solutions.
And this is why it is very difficult to have negotiations now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is, no, sorry.
It's not possible to negotiate when one part doesn't want to be involved, doesn't want to solve.
Yeah.
There's only one way to solve the conflict, his way.
Yeah, this is depressing. This is really depressing. And sure, all people will try to find a solution. But some people think that it will not stop really, but it will also not more war. So it will be a continuing battlefield in a way, and this is awful, because we are talking about suffering of people. We are talking about such a lot of people who are now who are not allowed to live. We are talking about women who are raped. We are also talking about men who are raped. We are really talking about a huge suffering. It's not something intellectual. Okay, we can talk about on an intellectual level, but it is a deep suffering, and it is destruction of lives, destruction of homes. It's unbearable. And so when we say there is no solution, that's really hard.
You're touching upon so many points, which I will try to pick up now. For example, whether war is masculine or feminine, whether the concept of the hero and the fatherland, and whether it will be total war in Europe, and even if it's appropriate or not to psychopathologize Putin. But let's go one by one. Is war masculine? Is war masculine and feminine? Is war else? It sounds banal. Svetlana Alexievich wrote about this, and I would like to hear your opinion.
Yeah. If you don't connect it with men and women, if you connect it to principles, then you could say fighting is more a masculine principle, but this is women can fight as well. And caring, perhaps it's more a feminine. And actually, in the war, you have the same, because when we are looking at television, we have always a negativity bias. They are showing us a lot of destruction. And then perhaps they are showing us for a short moment people who are caring for other people who are saving other people, who are giving them something. And I think war does not only mean that it is there is destruction, war also means that people are really caring for themselves. And in this way, we could say, but what does it bring us when we say war is male? We know that war exists. We know that war brings the most awful parts in human being at the surface, but also the best parts, I think. So it's an ultimate challenge. But does it help us when we see it as masculine and feminine? Because I think both is there.
In the caring aspect, this is where I wanted to get, because of course, usually soldiers are male, but now there are also female soldiers. We have so many examples around the world, and I just underline four. For example, Anna Politkovskaya, this journalist that was killed, supposedly, Putin, the Pussy Riots, Svitlana Tsikhanouskaya, or recently Marina Ovziniokova, the journalist who, sorry for pronunciation.
No problem.
It's embarrassing, but another thing. In East Germany, they were learning Russian, and in Western Germany, they were learning English. That's why we had difficulties with these beautiful names. I think this shows that war is also female or feminine. They took care of something, of their the rotten part, and the names is much more. But in our idea, the warrior, the gladiator is a man. And I met a woman 4 years ago at a conference in Frankfurt. She was a former American soldier from the Navy. And she said that she was the first woman, female, who was allowed to have, I don't know how you call it, but bluntly is to press the button so that the missile goes and hits pirate's boat. She No female was allowed before because the army, the Marines thought that a woman would not be fit for that job. And she said, at the end, is pressing a button. Who knows if the army is right or she is right? Well, she got the position, but I think she also got very much traumatized by that. And she ran away from
but I think all the people who are in the war, the soldiers are traumatized. We know this from World War II. And there is one idea that if you kill someone, you kill something in yourself. But there are also studies that a lot of soldiers are not able to kill someone. And this is why it is much easier to press the button. This is also why they need tanks and they need rockets and so on. Because really to kill someone is for most people very difficult.
Yeah. This is a very interesting point. Huh?
But and in Ukraine, could see that there have been a lot of women who learned to shoot, and I think this is our gender model. I thought, but this is not right. This shouldn't be the case. But then I could identify with them and say, okay, before I get shot, perhaps I would also like to be able to shoot. If I could shoot, I don't know.
You see, this is exactly what a Ukrainian patient I'm working with since 2 years. She said, until 2 months ago, shooting, killing was illegal. Now is a need. We need to kill before to get killed. And this is a tragedy, not only because it's Europe, because this is going on everywhere. One of the critique is why Ukraine and not other countries? Well, because of the values and the history we mentioned before. But what are the consequences of this, Verena? Because it's going to be a big scar, big wound, big scar on Europe, perhaps globally. What could be the con? Because the country is destroyed. In 2 months, this country got destroyed. And who knows how long this is going to happen. Psychosocially, not only from an infrastructure point of view, because we are still healing from the wounds of the Second World War.
Don't we have now the negativity bias? I know from people, they have been in Switzerland, they go back. When you ask them why are they going back, they want to build Ukraine up again. They are traumatized in a way. They are, but they are very courageous. I don't think that everything is destroyed. No. We will have a lot of people with post-traumatic stress disorder, especially the young girls who have been raped. I think this is incredible. This is insupportable. And there, I think we will help them. Europe will help with psychological, psychosocial help. But no, I think if something is destroyed, you can also build it up. And this is my hope. I think it would be difficult for me if this war is going on and going on. But when I have talked to these people, and these people, perhaps I can't really understand them, but they have a courage to say, yeah, but life has to go on. It's a new normality, but life has to go on. No one says that it is easy. And I hope that the West will help. We are also touched. We are touched in our beliefs, in our convictions. We are also touched in. No, it is not just cooperation. We have also to be very careful about the interdependence, about being dependent. This is good for the ecological crisis because I think this is a very good situation where we can leave the oil. Where we can use much more renewable energies and so on. So it's not only bad.
Yesterday, I interviewed a woman, Vicky Sims, who is a priest for the Church of England, and it was a long conversation. And like you, she underlined hope. Priest, hope is very, very important. I would like to focus now on you touched upon it twice. My usual question is why war turns normal person into beasts, and there is an example I would like to share with you of a man, Roman, and his wife Olga. Roman is or was a Russian soldier who asked permission to his wife to rape Ukrainians, women. The woman said, yes, rape them, use a condom, and don't tell me about it. He answered, really? Can I do that? Yes. Rape them. Let's hope we win soon. Why? Why? We turn into beasts. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. But it's also to rape women is killing without you have to kill them. Because you break something in them. And I think also that it is also the moral of the man, because that the husbands, the fathers, they also want to protect the women, and if they can't protect the women, it also hurts them very much in her understanding of themselves. So I think this to rape women is war without using a gun, or you use the sexuality as a gun.
I wanted to give this example to show the lowest point, perhaps, but you underlined already twice creativity, the possibility of hope, of the positive, as if war turns people into something more elevated. Can you give some example? Can you say more something about, well, we don't see we see the negativity bias. Let's see the positivity, not bias, but the positivity possible.
But I think this is archetypal. In the moment where everything seems to be lost, then hope starts. Not expectations, but hope. This deep human feeling, I am alive, and as long as I am alive, I will fight for this life. And this is the moment when you really can experience hope. Hope is the emotion that accompanies the living process of ours. As long as we are living, we have hope, and with this hope, and then if you feel this hope, you do what you can do, and I think this is the moment when people have a lot of fantasies. People are very inventive. If you can't buy everything, then you start to organize it. And I think this is what we shouldn't forget, that people are intelligent, people have a lot of fantasies, people can work together, and in working together we can create a lot of good ideas, also a lot of good energies. And in the moment when nothing is there, either you kill yourself or you cooperate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to Russia. Why this war? I have a fantasy I would like to share with you. You said this war is a revenge. I wonder whether it could be also compensation, not from the Jungian, but more from Adlerian point of view. I believe that when one is ashamed of his father, for example, let's look at Freud, at the hat situation where move away Jew in the street of Vienna, or Jung that was ashamed of his father, who was a priest but lost his faith. Then the young man or the young woman, but especially the young man, compensates and has to become a hero. The hero that the father is not, but that I thought my father was. This is perhaps the example with Jung and Freud, and we can give many other examples. If we look at Putin, as we said before, he said the worst day in my life was the day that the Soviet Union ended, imploded. Who could be his father? Yeltsin, those that put him at the KGB, even Lenin or Stalin, we don't know. Is this war about this? Fatherland, compensation? What do you think?
You have been talking about young men, and Putin is not a young man. I think for the young men, if they find that their fathers are not heroes, actually, I even hope that nowadays the fathers do not have any more heroes. For me, a father who is a hero is a distant father. And I understand the fathers of our times much more as motherly fathers or fatherly mothers, and much more connection and not so much heroic. For Putin, so I think as young men can try to become heroes in such a moment, this compensatory moment you are talking about. I can see it in young people. Putin is old, and sure, we can see this. We know that he had a very difficult childhood. He was traumatized. Father was also in the war. He has multiple traumas. And I think he compensated his whole life. Also the enormous wealth he tried to gain, and also when you think the power. For me, it is the powerless parents and the powerful. This is now utmost power he has when he thinks that he can, in a war, destroy another country. Mm. So this is for me a compensation. But it is not only this. You can also say, but what is so remarkable is that Putin feels threatened. Mm. So Putin felt threatened by NATO, by the West. And all the people who wanted to talk to him said, but look, Putin, we are not the ones who are invading Ukraine. You are invading Ukraine. And so for me, it is a kind of, it's almost a kind of paranoia. And sure, you can say this paranoia because if power corrupts, huh? Because you have no one who can mirror you, you can tell you, but now it's if this is combined with this compulsive fear to be threatened, this is really a deadly mixture.
Compulsive fear to get threatened, yeah. And at the end, this compulsive fear is a fear of losing your identity, either the collective identity of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, but perhaps it is losing identity. Actually, when you think, what did he do with Russia? Putin was not always the same. But now when you look at it, it is an authoritarian presidentalship. And Russian people are just looking at him, not all. A lot of Russian people are suffering very much. But there are a lot of people, he's the one who saves them, who gives them the idea that they are good and they are great.
So that's why it comes back for me, the idea of the hero that is distant, is like a distant father in his castle that has no relationship and looks from top down. We will talk about another hero or possible hero soon, but let me ask you something about Putin, or a general question. Is it appropriate to psychopathologize him? We did it, or the media did it for him in the past 2 months. They did it with Trump. They always do it with the bad guy. Is it appropriate? But we did it also today, just now.
No, it's not appropriate. I think to diagnose is only appropriate if you are in real contact with someone, but we can't help ourselves that we start to talk about, perhaps not so much as psychotherapists, but as normal human beings. But this is unbelievable what happens there. Then we have the word narcissism, power. Everything is okay, but that is not a proper diagnosis. It only tells us we don't know what we have to think about. And we would like to have a diagnosis, perhaps. If we would have a diagnosis, perhaps we would know what are his intentions.
Yeah.
And I think diagnosis is okay, but I mentioned it, he's an old man. He seems to be a sick man. And then we have the problem of death. And in the face of death, the question is, what is now important for someone? And it is crucial if you are at the end of your life and you say, what is important is, in his diction, to bring the Ukraine back home. In our diction, to destroy a lot of the world.
What do you think of Zelensky?
Well, I think a lot of Zelensky. I think he's very brave. What I think is it's a new kind of politician who is also the information, the communication is a different one. I don't know what happens with Zelensky when this war is over. Because he is now very much moving in the image of the hero, and this is also what I don't like. I don't like when he is pressing the West so much. You have to do this and this, and if you are not doing this and this, then you are bad. Then you are not friends, and so I don't like this. I would like to have it a little bit more liberal. I can understand it in his situation, but my worry is really what happens to him when the war is over, because then they don't need a hero.
Yeah.
If you want to have a hero, I think Zelensky is a kind of hero, and it's a kind of hero for time, for a certain time.
A little bit like Churchill. He was very good during war, but after he was not able to over the country out of war.
Yeah, actually, I was also thinking about, wouldn't it have been better to give in the beginning and not to let destroy everything, and then to fight on a diplomatic level. But I can't say this. We can say this from outside, and this
is also the point that with priest Vicky Sims was touched yesterday. And she said, "Who are we?" And she's American. Who are we to ask Ukrainians to not fight?
Yeah.
Are we asking Ukrainians to not fight so that we can continue watching Netflix or keep enjoying our 78 years of peace? They are teaching us what freedom is in the 21st century, in Europe, obviously. Yeah? You get attacked.
Yeah.
We are reaching the end of the conclusion, the end of this conversation. And we mentioned already that you and I had a conversation 2 years ago about COVID. I would like to do a mea culpa, or to offer a mea culpa, because I thought it was an opportunity to decelerate, to be able to return to the outside after the pandemic and maintain an inner and outer balance, to move from a world based on hopes and expectation, the linear world, to one where interiority and spirituality once again can be contemplated. Creativity of the soul, you said many times in that conversation, it's about creativity. I wonder whether I was naive. We were naive. I wonder whether Michel Houellebecq was right, who said in 2020, the world will be the same, only a little worse. Are we also naive talking about this war?
Yeah, that's possible. Perhaps we have been both naive, but I don't leave the path of hope, because it is correct, in pandemic times, people could live much better when they had more contact with the inner world, when they had more contact with just memories of good times. And they say, okay, and these memories will one day, we will realize it again. This is how we overcome also traumatic experiences. So I think perhaps we have been naive in believing that this will now be something for everybody, but it has changed something, and it has also changed something in a way that we are not anymore so convinced that we are indestructible, and this is a big change. I think naive means we have only one side, and we have always to see both sides, and. When someone says it will be the same world, only a little bit worse, I'm even not so sure if this is correct. Some things will be worse, no question. But perhaps something will also be better. So I really fight against this negativity bias.
I like it so much, and perhaps this is one other way to see war as reset, not only as the beginning of something new, but of switching from the negativity bias to hope, and hope that we can develop and perpetuate a co-construction of meaning, at least as European, based on what Habermas and Derrida say. But let me offer another mea culpa, which is less on us because we are Europeans, or you're Swiss, I'm Italian, but we've been talking about Putin and Russia. What about the US, for example? What is the difference between this war and the crap perpetrated by the US since the end of the World War II? Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. What about the US invasion and occupation or political destabilization since the 1946 under the guise of liberating them, and since 1991 under the pretext of spreading liberal democracy? Maurizio Ferrara, that we quoted before on Corriere della Sera on the 7th of March, looks at the US invasion of Iraq and underlines that some commentators back then observed that it was a predetermined carnage, just like the one of the last 2 months, which took place after a month of preparation. Ferrara also reminds us that the Nobel Prize for Literature, Svetlana Alexievich, has drawn a very clear picture of the imperiality impulses not only of Putin, but also of a large part of the Russian population, the long wake of the Homo Sovieticus, and before that of the Tsarist tradition. But what about the imperialist impulses of the USA? And apart from the USA, every time the British invaded and occupied a country, they created problems, civil wars. Once they left, for example, Kenya, Cyprus, Palestine, and they still occupy, one could say, Ireland. Are the action of the British Crown and the death they caused any different than those of Stalin, the US, or Putin? When colonial Britain occupied countries and took everything from them, the capitalist US invaded countries for geopolitical reasons and for the goods. And let's not forget about South America. It's provocative, of course, but I think it's important to also ask this question, because otherwise we will also only say Putin is bad, the Russians are bad, which is not true. The Russians are not bad, but
no, the Russians are not bad.
But I told me the other day they are prisoners in their own countries, yes, but they could also leave. What about the US, British Crown, and this hypocrisy about?
Yeah, I think this is what we should also admit. It is nothing new what happens in the Ukraine, because this has happened in the whole world by different countries, and it is also, I think we are reacting much more to the Ukraine because it's much closer, and it's much closer to our. It touches our values. And now it touches also our economy. But there are different countries in the world who started with wars. And I think if we are talking about evil or not evil, to start a war is evil. And perhaps what is a little bit special, but might be that I'm not informed enough, is the narrative. The narrative of Putin is really, it is in a way incredible. That whatever he fears, he projects on the others. And even Lavrov, when he's talking about Jews are a part of Holocaust and such things, it is incredible what is going on with these narratives. And perhaps I didn't catch the narrative connected with Iraq or with Afghanistan, but I don't think that it's only the Russians. War should stop.
War should stop, and listening to you comes to my mind after the catastrophe by Jung, where he looks at Germany and National Socialism and Hitler, and he somehow say that Hitler was hysterical, but not the clinical hysteria, especially hysteria that makes you lie, and you believe in your lies, and your people also believe in the lies you say, and they create lies.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't this what is going on today? It seems really that a conversation with Russian journalists invited by Western...
That is, how would we call it? Hysterical? What would we say? It is a pseudologia fantastica or something like this.
Yes, yes, you're right.
Yeah, and sure, it is not just this, because Putin really worked on the media. The media in Russia, you could have seen it in years and years, how the media have been less and less free, how people who didn't say what Putin wanted to say, they got to jail, or they have been killed. Journalists have been killed. So he worked very much on this, I am the truth.
Yeah. I am the only truth.
Yeah.
I ask you many questions. I let you finish and conclude these. If you have anything else to add that I was not able to ask you.
No, but I'm really impressed by the negativity bias and the positivity bias. And I think it is so important when you are mea culpa, perhaps I was naive. I think it is so important to keep in mind that we have always to have these two parts of life, and perhaps it's even more than two parts, that we are convinced that there is positive, there is a creativity, we have imagination, we have creative imagination, we use it also for the ecological crisis, and we are using it. And on the other hand, there is destruction, there is this will to destroy. This is also in ourselves, but it is also in the whole world. And I think when we want to do something against war, I think it's so important to hold these two tendencies in our psyche in a balance.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Verena. We didn't talk about the environmental crisis, but this war is overshadowing the environmental. Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Stefano.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.